Hello, my name is Richard Dollinger. I am an attorney and a retired member of the New York Court Clinic. I live in Rochester, in Western New York, and the story that I've written about for the Archive magazine is an interesting connection between two New Yorkers, uh, Western New Yorkers, basically, who in many cases may have flown under the radar of both the history of the state of New York and, quite frankly, the history of the United States. I was interested in this matter involving Federal District Court Judge John Hazel and the revolutionary anarchist Emma Goldman because their lives intersected at two critical moments in American and New York state history that I think are noteworthy and give a sense of the character of Western New York and the evolution of America in the 20th century, a local name and a identity right here in New York. My story is about John Hazel, who was a Republican, conservative Republican in Buffalo in the late 1800s. He became a good friend of President William McKinley and an even better friend of the future governor and the Rough Rider, then Theodore Roosevelt. He rose to a position where he was employed by McKinley to be a federal district court judge, the very first federal district court judge in the Western District. The other protagonist in this piece is a woman named Emma Goldman. He was once described as being the most dangerous woman in America. He's an anarchist, a revolutionary. She has ties to Rochester, New York, because although she was a Russian immigrant, she lived here in Rochester for a bunch of years and got married here and divorced here, and then remarried here a second time. And the story is about the interconnection of these two interesting events. One is the assassination of President William McKinley in Buffalo by a Polish immigrant who claimed he was inspired by the writing of Emma Hazel. And of course, the assassination for both the criminal trial, the immigrant who assassinated McKinley was convicted and tried in short order. John Hazel had been the district court judge, had been one of the luminaries who had welcomed McKinley to Buffalo when he came here in 1998. Emma Goldman was suspected as being involved in the assassination plot, but the assassin eventually acquitted her by saying that while he had been inspired by her, she had had nothing to do with it. But McKinley, John Hazel's good friend, dies in Buffalo, and eventually Hazel performs the oath of office for McKinley's successor, Theodore Roosevelt, right here in Western New York and Buffalo shortly after McKinley's death. Emma Goldman flees, goes underground, but eventually comes back to be one of the leading revolutionaries and the leading voices for a new America that would feature an end to child labor, increased minimum wage, workers' compensation for those injured on the job. These were all part of her activism as an anarchist in the early 20th century. Their lives intersect a second time when the United States government seeks to strip Emma Goldman of her citizenship. They do that by stripping her former husband of his citizenship, and eventually Emma Goldman is charged with advocating against the draft in 1917. During the First World War, she sentenced to prison, eventually deported to Russia. She eventually returned to Canada and lives out her life in the United States. But the intersection of these two lives are really an important instance in the transition of America from the conservative, post-Republican, post-industrial boom of the late 19th century into the more progressive tradition in the early part of the 20th century, which eventually reaches its culmination in the New Deal with Franklin Roosevelt. My sources for this information are largely in the Buffalo Historical Society, which has a collection of John Hazel's paper, including all of his writing. In addition, in New York City and New York Public Library, there is information about Emma Goldman's book, her writing. There are a number of novels, a number of documentaries about Emma Goldman's career as an activist throughout the United States. So I thank the Buffalo Historical Society for giving me access. In addition, to put a kind word in, I've been to the state library a number of times. I was a state senator for 10 years and spent a lot of time in it. And I would just tell you that the New York State Library is an absolute font of information about all aspects of New York history, as it was the Empire State and as it seemed to be the leading power in a new nation in the 19th century and the early 20th century. I commend the New York State Library for its incredible collection of materials. The Buffalo Historical Society has an abundance of material as well. And the New York Times has allowed a search of all of its newspaper editions by putting them in line. That is extraordinary. Finally, I would just add that the New York Archive magazine is a treasure. It highlights the nooks and crannies of New York history. And you've come to a realization that it's the people of New York and their many and varied views that have contributed to the growth, not only of this state, but of this nation, and quite frankly, this civilization. People who came to New York, certainly Western New York, filled with the independent entrepreneurial spirit, whether it was the Terriers in Syracuse or Easton and Rochester. These industrialists pushed America to the forefront of the world. And when they did, people like John Hazel, the district court judge, or Emma Goldman, the anarchist, played major roles in the transformation of society and its thinking and its relationships to freedom and liberty. I'm proud to be an author. I want to thank everyone, Josie Madison, my editor at the Archive magazine, and this is a real chance to shine a little light on somewhat forgotten part of New York history that I hope will provide entertaining reading for everyone here. Thank you for allowing me to do this for you.